In this video, I'll discuss the various levels at which we can study human biology. The first level is the atom. This is the smallest unit of an element. Next up, we have the molecule. Two or more atoms held together in a stable association is called a molecule. Many molecules put together go into making a cell, which is the smallest structural unit of an organism that's capable of independent function. Next up, we have the tissue. A tissue is a group of similar associated cells that specialize to perform a specific function. An example of this would be the epidermis. That's a layer of tissue in which you have cells that are very similar morphologically. In other words, their shape looks very similar, and they have a similar function, which is to protect you from the elements. Next up, we have the organ. An organ is a structure composed of two or more different tissues working together to perform a specific function. An example, as you can see in this picture, is the stomach. The stomach is an organ. It's a very complex organ composed of many different types of tissues, all working together to have this common function. Another example would be your heart. That's another organ. The next level of organization is the organ system. An organ system occurs when you have a group of organs that work together to serve a broad function. So the gastrointestinal system, or GI system, is involved in digestion and absorption of nutrients. And so this includes the stomach, which we mentioned again earlier. That's an organ. It includes the esophagus, which is the tube that takes the food from the mouth to the stomach. It includes the mouth, includes the salivary glands. It includes the small intestine, the large intestine, the rectum, the anus. It also includes things like the liver and the pancreas. So all these different organs work together to give you the digestive system or the gastrointestinal system. Now, at the next level, we have the full organism. So you're an organism. You're an individual living being. You're a fairly complex multicellular organism. There are organisms that are much simpler. So, for example, a bacterium, which is a single cell, is a free-living organism. An amoeba, which we've mentioned before, that's a eukaryote, so therefore it has a nucleus, which is a membrane-bound structure within the cell, which contains the genetic material. Well, an amoeba is actually an organism also. It's a free-living, single-celled organism. Okay, next up, we have the population. A population is a group of individuals of the same species that occupy the same geographic area. So we could take, say, a metropolitan area around a city, and we say, okay, here's a population of humans living in this area. You could also speak of, say, a population of squirrels in a valley, or a population of lizards on a mountain. Those would all be populations. The next level is the community. This is all the different species that coexist in the same geographic area. So, for example, if you live in a city, you have a number of humans that live there, but you also have squirrels, you have birds, you might, depending on the climate, you might have lizards, you certainly have insects. You also have plants, trees, and so forth. So all of these different species, and we should include bacteria also. So bacteria, plants, animals, all living in one geographic location would constitute a community. The next level of organization is what's called the ecosystem. This is all the living organisms in a given area. So it's the community I just talked about, plus the physical environment with which they interact. So we would include, for example, rivers, ponds, lakes, mountains. We'd be talking about the chemicals in the environment. We'd be talking about sunlight coming into the ecosystem, providing energy for photosynthesis. So all that would be an ecosystem. And then finally, the highest level, we have the biosphere. This is the total of all the ecosystems on the Earth. Okay, so that's it. So basically, we've talked about a bunch of different levels in which we can study human biology. And really, all these different levels are all equally important. In order to understand humans, we have to understand a bit of chemistry, We have to understand a bit of cellular biology. We have to then talk about the organs and the organ systems, and then, how the organism as a whole works. But all that's really in the context of these greater things, such as the population, community, ecosystem, and biosphere also. So I'll stop there. That's it for this lecture.